So, Hari Om, Pranav ji, Hari Om, Prabhu ji, and Hari Om all. Today, we are going to have another very interesting talk in the Ascent Forum. And this one is about vacuum, and luckily not in vacuum because Pranav ji had clarified that. So, this talk about vacuum or no vacuum is a very intriguing question. So let's dive straight to Pranavji's talk. Welcome, Pranavji, and
Hi.
please. Yeah.
Okay. Hi everyone. Welcome to one more talk on the Ascent Forum. And this time, I'll be talking about this topic: vacuum or no vacuum. So, for people who don't understand what vacuum is or who needs more precise definitions, don't worry. I'll bring it along on the way. But what I want to say is that most of the talks in this Ascent Forum has been on how uh, the way of doing science, the way of conducting research in science, has a lot of parallel in philosophy, in Vedanta. But today, I'll be taking up a topic in physics, and I'll show you how the new understandings that we have because of very recent breakthroughs over this. By recent I mean 100 years, but that's how physics is. uh, this recent new ideas has shaped a new understanding in the way how nature works, and how these new understandings can be thought in a very can be thought of in a very natural way in the Vedantic perspective as well. So I'll be talking about, so this talk, unlike other talks, will be a little bit physicsy. I will be talking about the topic. I have made sure that I don't use jargon at all throughout this. I made sure that I am able to communicate these ideas without bringing the mathematics or the rigorousness of the physics, so that it's easy for you to understand. So at any point, if you feel that it's getting very heavy, you can just stop me and I'll just stop there. And for those people who already know some physics and want some rigor, you can just talk to me later and I can bring in more rigor. Uh, yeah, so let's go ahead. So the topic that I'll be talking on is this new interesting thing, quantum physics, that's creating a lot of buzz, uh, not only in the scientific community but also among the general populace these days. So over here, so this is just an introductory slide. If you, I mean, these pictures and all of these people and these mathematics that you see are not there to intimidate you. I'm not going to talk about any of these, but I just wanted to, have bring about a general awareness of all the people. These are not, it's not limited to these people. Of course, there are a lot of number of scientists who have contributed to quantum physics, but I just wanted to bring forth a few of the popular names so that, if you are interested, you can go ahead, read more on their discoveries and, in fact, their ideas as well. If you think like Einstein, Bohr, Schrodinger, all these people, Heisenberg, all these people were heavily influenced by our Eastern philosophies as well. So you can go ahead and read not only about their scientific work but also their personal life, and you'll come across that because of these new ideas had so much in connection with Vedantic philosophies, they were heavily influenced by those ideas as well. Yeah, so these are some of the scientists here: Einstein, Heisenberg, Planck, Bohr, Dirac, Feynman, and Schrodinger, and they contributed a lot to our present understanding of what quantum physics is. So, I'll be talking about one particular topic in quantum physics that seems to violate our common understanding of how nature works. It's quantum mechanics is at the heart. It's very very contradictory to what we think, and ideas are very very radical, and but that's how nature behaves. So we have to accept it, and that's one of the most fascinating parts about quantum mechanics or quantum physics. So I'll be talking about one particular idea in quantum physics. So what exactly is quantum? So quantum means to discretize things. Things become discrete. So if there is something continuous, it breaks into distinct things. For example, let's say you have a number system. So we know how to count 1, 2, 3, 4. So these are discrete things. If things are continuous, then you can say you can have numbers like 1.1 or 1.11, 1.111, and so on, and things are continuous on that scale. But 1, 2, 3, as soon as you break it and you discretize it, when it becomes countable, it becomes discrete. So quantum means to discretize things. So how does this work? So apparently nature behaves in such a way that when you go to very 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 small scales, things are discrete over there. And how do you understand this? So I have like two simple examples here. So let's say you have a glass of water. So you can think of the glass of water. So water inside, flows, and it's very neat. It's continuous, right? You don't feel any coarseness in the water. But if you think that the water is made up of these tiny droplets, then you can think of you can imagine having like a billion of these droplets that is finally composing this glass of water. So over there in that scale, in the scale of a droplet, things are discrete. You can't have 1.5 drops. You can't have 2.5 drops. You can just have 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, and so on. So when you have these billion drops, things seem to be continuous, and this is exactly how nature works as well. Another example that I personally like is, you take a heap of salt or you take a heap of sand, and let's say you run your fingers through that heap of salt, or you're in the beach and you're running your fingers through sand. It feels very smooth and very continuous. It like you just take and you can just feel the sand running between your fingers, and you can just drop it and it just kind of like flows. But if you look at it carefully, if you look at, let's say, a heap of salt under a microscope or something, then it's made up of these tiny crystals, and they're all individually countable. Yeah. So so this is how nature also is. It turns out on a very small scale, everything comes in these discrete packets. Everything, in the sense that the energy that you can produce, the speed at which things can go, all of these are quantized, and all of these come in these discrete energy packets. You can't have 1.5 of these packets or half of this packet. Everything comes in these certain discrete quantities, and that is how nature behaves. And this is the very essence of quantum mechanics. Things are discrete here. All the observables like energy, speed, momentum, all of these become discrete. So how do we understand this? uh, so it turns out, since things are discrete now, uh, and you are making things out of these discrete things, I found an analogy here. So let's say you're building a house. So to build a house, you need brick, you need some cement, you need some wood, steel, and so on, and that's how you build a house, right? So you take each of these bricks, you put a little bit of cement, and then you arrange them in a certain way. Then you start taking a bit of wood, you apply it in, and then you use steel, and so on and so forth. And that's how you build the house, right? In the same way, in nature, we have these building blocks. So just like how you have bricks, cement, wood, and steel, to build up your house, you have these building blocks of matter, which we called as the standard model, and everything in the universe is built up of these building blocks. Just like how you can make a big house out of these tiny units like bricks, tiny units of steel, and so on. You build up each and everything in this universe from starting from these building blocks. So it turns out these building blocks are the most fundamental and most essential part of this universe. So just like how you can then have a different arrangement, like all of us have different houses. We use we use a different combination of bricks. We use a different combination of this cement, brick, wood, and steel to make all of these different kind of houses. Similarly, in the same way, nature also behaves. You just take these building blocks and you put them in some way and you create something called as a proton. You arrange them in another way and you create something called as a neutron. Then you put all of these together and you put in an electron to it, you make an atom. You collect all of these atoms, arrange them together, you make some molecules. You take these molecules, build them together, and then you make up a huge material, and you take up these materials and so on and so forth, and you create humans and all of these things. So finally, if you boil it down to its very essence, everything in this universe uh, consists of these fundamental building blocks. Okay, so now these building blocks have a very strange quality. So what is it? So let's try to understand it from first the perspective of the house. So let's say if these building blocks itself, like wood, uh, bricks, cement, and steel, they are not there. Let's say that these building blocks didn't exist at all. These building blocks needed to build a house didn't exist at all. So then what remains? Well, one can say it's emptiness. Um, and that is how we term that is one of the definitions that we have for vacuum. So you can say uh, things are things don't exist. So when things don't exist, there is some emptiness, and we call that as a vacuum. Now let's take the same analogy. Let's imagine a situation where these building blocks of universe itself are not there. They're not present. Uh, so then what is the scenario? It turns out in quantum physics or quantum mechanics, these things are not so simple. Uh, so it turns out in quantum mechanics, each of these individual building blocks that I was talking about have something called as a vacuum state associated with it. What does that mean? What it means is that there is something that pervades throughout this universe. There is something that pervades throughout this universe, and even when a particle, when one of these fundamental building blocks, even when one of those guys are not there, this still exists. So, and it turns out there are some very nice properties and things like that for that correspond to this vacuum state that kind of persists throughout space and time. So this is what we call as a quantum vacuum in quantum physics. And as it turns out, particles are created and particles dissolve into this quantum vacuum. Uh, so how does it work again? I have a small cartoon here. So imagine there is something that fills up this entire space and time, even though there is nothing that you can know about it, like there's no particle to know about it. uh, so there is no particle, but yet there is something. It's called as a vacuum that is there, and all of these particles, they come out of this vacuum, just like this cartoon. They spring forth from the vacuum, and after some time, they dissolve back into this vacuum state. So this is something that is very peculiar and associated to quantum mechanics, because in normal physics, in classical physics, or in normal days, let's say I have a phone, and there are some situations where I don't have a phone. So when I don't have a phone, there's nothing there. There is no phone, and no phone state is not describable. There's no signature of it. It's a proper vacuum. But it turns out in quantum mechanics that is not the case. There still seems to be something there, even though there's nothing there. So that's the exciting part about quantum mechanics, and everything appears and disappears into this quantum vacuum. So physicists have a term for this. We call this the dance of subatomic particles, because uh, there is because these particles seem to just come out of this vacuum state and dissolve back, and it turns out, there are probabilities, and it turns out that you can have two particles come out, you can have three particles, you can have multiple particles come out of this vacuum state, and it's all one huge um and then this vacuum state interacts with another vacuum state, and all of these interact, and it's all like a very neat dance of all of these subatomic particles that come up together, which forms atoms, molecules, and even humans later on. So this is our most fundamental understanding in physics about this vacuum state that exists even though there are no particles there, even though there's nothing there. There seems to be nothing there. So, uh, so this idea of something being there, even though nothing seems to be there, has some nice spiritual parallels. In one sense, we can use these ideas to actually deepen our understanding of some of the spiritual concepts. Uh, so we have this idea in Vedanta of Srishti, Sthiti, and Laya, where things get created, things remain for some time, and things dissolve. Now, this neatly fits into this understanding of particles coming out of a vacuum, remaining there for some time, performing the dance, and then dissolving back into the vacuum state. And if you think about it, it is actually at this most fundamental level, at the most fundamental level, these fundamental blocks are the ones who are executing this dance. So if you think about it, everything in the universe, if you think about it deeply from a very science perspective, everything in this universe is just part of this huge grand dance that these particles are performing. And at some state, things are just created, spontaneously created. They're going to exist for some time, and they're going to spontaneously dissolve as well. The other thing that is even more fascinating for me and for a lot of other people is this nature of this vacuum state itself. So far, when things are not there, when it is just so vacuum is just an absence of things, essentially emptiness, and that is how we have been understanding vacuum throughout physics. Is just an absence of things. But for the first time, what we have realized is this vacuum is not just an absence of things, but a great reservoir of a lot of potential. Because these particles seem to spontaneously come out of this vacuum state and dissolve back into this vacuum state, you can think of these vacuum states as a pure energy mode where it has infinite potential, where it has a lot of potential to naturally or spontaneously spring forth these particles and take them back as well. So this vacuum is not really an emptiness. If you think about it, it's just a huge source of potential that is not tapped yet, and that has this huge power to generate these particles and take back these particles as well. And it's spread throughout the universe. All of these vacuum states, all of these vacuum modes are uh, just spread throughout space and time. So for the first time, from a scientific perspective, we have understood that behind these particles, behind what we can think of as particles, there is a fundamental mode which operates, that has the potential uh, to bring forth these particles. So this idea kind of sits well with what we have in Vedanta as well, uh, where we have this concept of everything coming out of a common source. You can term it nothingness, although I feel that nothingness is not connected to this vacuum state, but it has a very nice parallel over there, where things come forth from nothingness and things dissolve into nothingness. And for the first time, we using science, you can using physics, you can try to understand these concepts at a very very deep level, because these fundamental units that I talk about are the most fundamental building blocks of the universe, and uh, essentially they make up the entirety of the universe. So, last thing that I want to say is, these ideas that I've been talking about, like I said, many of the physicists were inspired through Vedanta, through Eastern philosophies as well, when they were in the process of understanding quantum mechanics. And this is very common. And if you go to, so there's this place called CERN. It's like one of the you know how you know how spiritual people take religious people, you know how they go on a pilgrimage to the holy sites, like a big temple or something. We physicists, in order to know more about these particles, go to this place called CERN. So CERN is the leading place in understanding particle physics using experiments. And when you go to CERN, what you'll find this huge Nataraja statue right in front. Uh, and the idea behind this is that there is this nice spiritual parallel. Like I said before, all of these particles are just performing a dance, synchronizing a dance, and that's how you create all of these things. Uh, Nataraja is the meaning behind the Nataraja statue is that Nataraja is performing this cosmic dance, and it is the tandav that Nataraja performs that leads to this creation, sustenance, and destruction. There's a dissolution, and that we have a very nice parallel here in terms of physics. And that's why people have even honored Nataraja in CERN. Yeah, so that's it. Any questions?
Can you turn off the screen sharing?
Yes.
Wonderful, Pranav.
Yeah.
You made so complex things into a so simple to understand. Even a layman like us, we can understand. So, a question.
Yes.
We are speaking of no thing, which is not a thing, which is a particle, and no thing is not a thing actually. Right? It's not a thing,
Yes.
but it's not nothing also. It's not a vacuum also. Does it exist? So are we speaking of non-existence or are we speaking of existence?
So science always falls under the realm of existence.
Okay. So we are never speaking. Okay.
Because so okay. Again, existence is a thing. So for existence means, so in science, existence means something that I can observe and you can observe, where I and you are different entities.
Okay.
And there is something else going on, which is a different entity. So so in that way, this quantum vacuum that I said is not really a no thing, because it has properties. You can define things for it. You can actually sense you can actually sense what quantum vacuum is. You can do experiments to understand how this quantum vacuum works, and so on and so forth. So it has properties. But the idea of no thing, the idea of no thing means that there really doesn't exist something, yet it is the defining part of existence.
So we are defining existence in a different way.
So yeah, so this is, so like I said, this is a very nice idea. What for me, what this picture tells me is it's a nice aid for me to understand how things work on a very fundamental level. On a very fundamental level, things are just coming up, popping for some time, and going back. So this idea can be borrowed very heavily from the idea of our physics understanding. Now, the idea of this vacuum itself, this nothingness itself, we can discuss more.
Okay.
Very wonderful. Actually, we in parallel in Vedanta, we call as a dance of Shiva and Shakti, which you showed as a Nataraja.
Yes.
Dance of consciousness and actually Shakti is the energy. So, are we speaking of the vacuum as a consciousness, or you don't want to use the term called consciousness?
Yes, I willingly avoided these terms.
How can you avoid?
You have used the word potential, right?
Yes, that's why I use potential. So it turns out in science we have very concrete explanation or very concrete understanding of what energy is. So so energy has to have so when you define something called as energy, we have some concrete ideas of what energy is. And this quantum vacuum is actually an energy mode. So it is energy there. So, and what a particle is nothing but an intense manifestation of this energy mode. So it's like, let's say energy is spread around, and then you collect all of it and you concentrate it into one particular position. That is a particle. So that is how mass and energy are interchangeable. You just take a collection of these energy modes and then you bring it together and then you concentrate it into one particular point in space, and that's how you make mass. So this vacuum mode is essentially an energy mode, and this energy mode is actually coming because of what we call as uncertainty in uncertainty. This is another fundamental principle in quantum mechanics. It turns out, so for example, if I take this phone, I can measure its length to any extent I want. To any small, like I can say it is 1 centimeter, or I can say it is 1.111111 centimeter, and so on. But it turns out in quantum mechanics, things are not so simple. You can never, ever completely know what a particular particle's energy is. We are fundamentally limited by an uncertainty. So we can never know that. So this vacuum state is essentially coming because of that. We can't know exactly what the energy is. So there's always some finite energy. You can never have zero energy. There's always going to be some finite energy, even when things don't exist. And that is this vacuum mode. So that vacuum mode that I talk about in quantum mechanics has a very precise definition this way. It's essentially an energy that is coming because of not knowing, not able to know. So you can think of it that way also. It's like there are always things that you won't be able to know.
The energy has the information embedded in that, because ultimately universe is a structure.
So
right?
Information, again, we have very precise definition of what information is. We call that as entropy. We measure it by the degree of randomness that exists in this universe. So you can associate, that information with these vacuum modes as well. And it turns out, I don't want to go into the math, but you can associate things over there. Yeah. So it's essentially saying how much information, how much of that chaosness, or how much of that information is spread in that vacuum, in that energy distribution around in that vacuum mode.
We have a very simple name for that: Shiva and Shakti.
Right.
We speak of various vacuums: the physical vacuum, psychological. It's like Adi Bhautika, Bhutakasha, Chittakasha, Chidakasha, Mahakasha. So there are many levels of emptiness. The ultimate emptiness is what we call as Shiva.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Pranav.
Maybe we are the vacuum that we have defined just now is somewhere in between.
Yeah. So, can we say there is really a spatial vacuum? Space, does it exist or does not exist? Is there a place where in vacuum space is not there?
So the concept of the concept of space and time is different from this. All of these vacuum states, they are defined on a template of space and time. So now, how does space and time exactly work? What is the dynamics of space and time itself? So that part is not quantized yet. So we don't have a quantum theory for that. But the way space and the way space and time is, it's essentially defined through this general theory of relativity, and it's just there. Space and time are the fundamental things, and on top of which you have all of your physics defined. So is there a place where space and time doesn't exist is kind of meaningless to ask a physicist.
So my question is, something which is less than the Planck's length and Planck's second, can we say there is space and time in that?
So these things, Planck's length and Planck's second, so these are, units that we have come up. So Planck's length, okay. So Planck's length is just a unit that we have created. So far, there is no realistic experiment that goes anywhere close to these lengths. It's a very, very, very small unit of length. And all Planck's length is saying is that less than that lengths, or less than that, when you're near those length scales, space and time becomes a quantum form. can become quantized. That's all it's saying. It's not some special unit beyond which things exist and below which things don't exist. It's just saying, like, for example, uh, you can have a lot of length scales. Like, there's a length scale associated with me also. I can define my quantum nature. What is the probability that I can pass through this wall over here and go to the other side? I have a very, very finite probability. It's just that it's very, very unrealistic. That's why if I try to walk through this wall, I'll be very stupid. But there is a length scale associated with all of these. All it's saying is that uh, at some length scales, some physics manifests. So this quantized length, quantum Planck length, Planck second, all it's saying is that if there is something, then if those physics exist, because experimentally we are nowhere close to those length scales. But if they exist, then space and time can be quantized. That is the idea behind those length scales. That's it. So there's nothing special about it saying less than that, there is nothing, more than that, there is something. Because
yeah, good. So because several books talk about this possibility of space and time, or obviously in quantum physics and known physics, we can only talk about something above this Planck's thing. Planck's is the kind of limit for our measurements, beyond which theoretical measurements, we are nowhere, as you really said. That's right.
So that Planck's scale is just setting you the uncertainty. For example, like
beyond that, everything is uncertain.
No, it's not that beyond that everything is uncertain. For example, I can figure out, it's like this. So there is something that is giving me a limit to my uncertainty. Like I said, you can actually figure out where exactly you are to infinite time, like in terms of time. Or so the usual uncertainty is in position and speed. So for example, right now this phone over here, I can exactly pinpoint where it is, and I can exactly say what its speed is. So its speed is 0, and it's somewhere exactly here. But it turns out in quantum mechanics, you can't figure out both together. So if you figure out where exactly this box is, you will never know next second where it will go. So so that is the uncertainty. So everything is just limit. It's some uncertainty businesses. That's it.
Okay.
So are we in the domain of physics to magic? Philosophy to physics. Physics to magic. We can manifest anything, demanifest anything, materialize anything, transportation, teletransportation, quantum computing. Are you in the domain of that border of?
So if I say quantum computing doesn't exist, I will lose all my money to perform research.
Okay.
So we are slowly there. So I like to think about it this way. So 200 years back, if I went 200 years back, magically transported myself, and I said I can talk to people with this thing over here, they'll say I've gone mad, I'm crazy. I just feel like things are going to be that way. What seems to be magic is science for some people.
Okay.
So yeah.
So possibility exists in future.
Yeah, I mean, there are infinite possibilities. Who knows what the future holds?
Yeah, the kind of analogy you gave with mobile 200 years back to now.
Yeah.
This is a possibility, maybe another 200 years ahead.
Sure. Yeah, why not?
And what particles come out of quantum domain? Are they virtual or real?
Yeah, so far our understood. Okay, what a virtual particle is.
Subatomic particle, what you're speaking of.
Yeah.
Are they real or virtual?
Yeah, so again, virtual and real have very precise definitions. What it means is that, so for example, let's say I have an electron and I have another electron. When these two electrons meet and they move away. So one electron and another electron repel. So it turns out the way they repel is by interacting with something called as a light particle called a photon. So that in this beginning of the process and in the end of the process, this photon is nowhere. But this photon is the one that aids in this electron seeing this other electron. In that way, it's called as a virtual particle.
What is virtual? Photon.
The light particle, yeah, the photon, because in the beginning of the process, that particle is not there. In the end of the process, also that particle is not there. But that particle aids in this electron seeing this electron and moving.
That means photon is like a hello by electron. It's like a communication.
Yes, exactly. It's a communication thing. Like, for example, I can speak to you from this phone. Now, I can hear your voice, you can hear my voice. But but there is this invisible radio waves that is transmitting my information to you. All I can see is I am talking to you. I can't see that. It's kind of like that.
So basically, subatomic particles are virtual particles.
So
they appear on need basis and disappear.
So that is not quite the case. It's just that these guys aid, but you can actually pull out a real particle and a real antiparticle from the vacuum itself. So this is also there. So there are all sorts of things that are possible, and all these are just there. So that electron and this electron is also coming from a quantum vacuum. So these are real particles, and then these virtual particles are essentially the ones that are not there from the start and in the end of the process. That's it. That's the only distinction.
Okay. So are we real or are we virtual? Are we? Because we are made up of all these particles that are coming and bubbling and going up. Are we there or not there?
Oh, you need to define you need to define we now. What is we?
This body, this mind, this world.
Okay. So if you think about this body, I think it's a bit simple to understand using this picture now. The body, you can think of it as in some grand way that we don't know yet. That it's just like this dance. It just comes up, bubbles. At some point, it forms this grand structure called the Pranav's body. And then at some point, I mean, if you think about it, in every millisecond, we are all changing. Like not even a millisecond. These things happen at a time scale of, I don't know, picoseconds, like much smaller than that. So at those time scales itself, we are like changing a lot. So much changes are happening. So if you think about it, this body itself is not there, because what you define as body at one instant is not the same thing in the next instant.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is one thing that we can understand quite deeply from this, because things are just changing.
So basically, nothing is speaking about nothing in some way.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else has a question on Zoom, please?
So I have a question, Guruji.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's like when we do some meditation practices, as you said, the nothing state, no thought state can be defined as a vacuum. As is emptiness, right, Pranavji? So that state, how you can relate this quantum physics to that state of spirituality? Like no thought state when we are meditating. As you said, we are virtual beings. So we will be changing. We are energy beings. So no thought state means I am concentrating on the mind level.
Make it simple, Pranav. When you go to deep sleep, there's nothing exists. So are we in quantum vacuum, or are we the quantum vacuum? Are we in quantum vacuum in deep sleep? Meditation is equivalent of that.
Yes, Pranav. So when we are in deep sleep, can we experience that vacuum state?
No, we cannot experience that. We are the quantum vacuum.
We are vacuum. Yes.
So every day it's quantum vacuum is our day-to-day experience in deep sleep. Is it? Do you agree or disagree?
You're asking me.
Yes,
Yeah.
Pranav.
So quantum vacuum is very difficult for physicists to create in the lab for us, but it is very natural for us. When you go to sleep, deep sleep, we enter into vacuum, and that we call as quantum vacuum. Morning, the world comes out of that and dissolves. Is deep sleep quantum vacuum or not?
Uh, you're asking uh, as a physicist. I'll say we are not understood that yet, because because so again, like, you need to start defining things for me. Uh, so like I said, what this quantum vacuum is takes a very precise definition for us. What that energy is takes a precise definition. Now, if you say in deep sleep, I enter into quantum vacuum, or I am quantum vacuum, what does that mean? Uh, are the two energies that you're talking about the same? I don't know. I don't think so. But what I'm saying is that you can draw these analogies, which are very nice, and you can draw these things as a source of understanding. Uh, so for me, the main takeaway from this is just looking at it from the perspective of physics. From the perspective of physics, what we can really understand is that things are always going to change. Things are changing uh, at such speeds, at such times, scales that we can't even comprehend. And things are just changing all the way. And essentially, everything is just finally made up of these fundamental particles. So we don't know how these fundamental particles are finally put up. So when you say, when I meditate, I don't know what that I is. Is that I referring to this body mind mechanism? If that is the case, what is this body mind mechanism? How does that relate to these subatomic particles? I don't know any of these things. So, so all I can say is that we can use this analogy to understand our to deepen our understanding to a significant level. What we can really understand is that this entire whatever physical exists is going to change at a very, very, very rapid level. It's going to keep changing, and that physical thing could be my body. That physical thing could be what I think is my mind, or that physical thing could be what I think is my intellect. But whatever physical there is, it's going to be changing. That's all I can say.
So my question is, can I go and influence quantum? Like quantum field or whatever is that? It's like a foam for me. It's like a raw material. Can I pick up something, create something out of that? At any point of time, physics creates something out of that?
Yeah, so that's the whole point of this.
Gold out of quantum material. I want gold. Can you get that? Can you create something out of the quantum vacuum?
So okay. So creating something out of the quantum vacuum, again, all of these is related to these particles, these small subatomic particles. Like I said, let's say you take two of them. You take two subatomic particles together and you try to understand the physics of it. We don't know. Like, you just take two of those subatomic particles. You're talking about taking a billion of these things to create something called as gold. And like, a physicist will just give up and they'll say, no, I am not going into that field at all. So, so these ideas of like vacuum and things like that are operating at a really, really fundamental level. And when you start putting things together, in fact, that's the field I'm working on, condensed matter physics. When you start putting things together, it's not the same way as individual things behave at all. So there's this whole new field that we still don't understand properly. When you just take a few of these things and put them together, now you are talking about creating a human being, which is a really, really, really complex system. Like, a physicist will just give up and say, I don't know about any of these things. So to answer your question on a vacuum, like I said, there is a small probability associated with everything. Like I said, there is a finite probability I can pass through this wall as well. But what are the chances? It's near practically zero. What are the chances you can pull something like gold out of that vacuum? Right now, if you want to engineer that and say, yes, I can just create something at my will or something like that, the chances are again zero. What can happen later? I don't know. Maybe somebody can find engineer ways of manipulating these states. For example, the ones that we are working on, this quantum computation, it's essentially trying to manipulate these quantum states. So we are able to manipulate these quantum states at that subatomic, at that particle level. Right now we can manipulate them. We can try to control over 100 of them and determine their outcome and things like that. So we are able to manipulate things at some level, and that is this whole field of quantum computation. But I don't know, like, if you can, how much scalability exists. Can you just pull things out of a hat? I don't know.
The Tesla, not the original Tesla, he said,
Yes.
from the quantum field you can draw infinite energy.
Yeah, because this vacuum
Yeah,
energy,
yeah,
like I said,
Yeah,
yeah.
that is
So
the point.
again, what he said is again very precise. Infinite energy. What he means is that this. So each of these quantum vacuum, like I said, has some energy, and it turns out there are infinite of these modes. So infinite times something finite is still infinite, and that's why he's saying there's infinite energy there. That's why I use the word potential. I like there is infinite potential in that space. Yes.
Wonderful, Pranav. Anybody on the Zoom has any questions? So nice question. So nice, interesting discussions.
So the answer is we can create, Guruji. We can create.
I believe, it's my personal opinion. I cannot I can't speak from physics point of view.
Okay.
So actually, I think our Rishis and Mahabharata time, when they use the weapons, they're as powerful as what we call as, are much more powerful than the weapons which are used in the modern day world. And they are weapons using consciousness. Using consciousness, they are able to create the explosions. So this is actually, we can't put it in science category or myth category, but I believe they were able to manipulate the quantum field. That's where many of these things, what they say, Maya, appearances, disappearances, what they're able to twist the quantum field. That's what I believe. I mean, I can't prove, but I understand.
Is there
Is it possible? I believe it's possible. I think we are approaching a day where we can play around with the quantum field. That's when human beings become perfectly equivalent of God. Yes, Ron?
Prabhuji, is there a divine vacuum?
No, that quantum vacuum is actually what we call as, he calls as, scientists call as quantum vacuum. We call it as Parameshwara or Parabrahma, supreme reality. And the potential of that is called Parashakti, energy. That divine vacuum is, in Buddhism, they call it as emptiness.
Okay.
In Vedanta, they call it as Pradnanam, awareness. Okay, in Vedanta, in Purana, they call it as Parameshwara and Parashakti. That's the divine vacuum.
Yes.
Shunya, that's what he called Shunya.
Shunya. Yeah. So in the beginning, you asked a question to Pranavji. Can we do without vacuum?
Actually, we are the vacuum.
We are.
And everything is just an appearance in the vacuum. Appearance is not real, it's virtual. So we are the vacuum.
Okay. So in reality, only vacuum exists.
Only reality vacuum exists. Everything is a dance of vacuum.
Okay.
Anyway, this is my understanding. Yeah, definitely may not agree with this.
Okay, that's true.
So I had given a talk on dance of nothingness.
That's the Vedanta position. And also this fridge of copra, I think you are talking about some scientists in CERN.
Yeah.
He was also talking about Nataraja and said the same thing, that everything, whatever is there, we are only seeing the dance, and the dance is the creation. If he
Yes.
doesn't dance, we don't know what it is, how he is.
In Mandukya, Alata Shanti Prakarana, Alata Shanti,
Yes.
dance. So
Yes.
dance is not real. And then in essence, there's only vacuum. We can't say we are in vacuum. We are the vacuum.
But it's interesting, like Pranav said, the comparison between what we know in Vedanta and what the modern science is now talking about. There's so much of parallel. If we really try to connect both, we'll get into exciting and sometimes even absurd situations,
So,
propositions.
small correction, Shravan. What we
Huh?
think we know in Vedanta and what scientists think they know about quantum physics,
Both
they,
are-
what is reality, we don't know.
Yes. Yeah. Reality can never be known. Yeah. Anyone who from the live
Audience?
stream, there is any question? Rachitaji, is any question on the live stream?
Namaste, Hari Om. Sir, this is not a question, but it is something that I have read quite a while ago. In the in the Upanishadic time, and after that period, rational thinking, the Nyaya Vaisheshika philosophy emerged. And in the Tarka Sangraha of Annam Bhatta, they focus on how they can understand the material world. And they did not believe, the Charvakas never believed in anything that is not felt by the senses. So they never believed in God. There's nothing out, if it is out of your purview, if it is out of your perception, it doesn't exist. So even in that, there is a a reference to Sapta Padarthas. So
Correct.
they say Dravya Guna Karma Samanya Vishesha Samavai Abhava Sapta Padartha. So Abhava is also treated as a Padartha. And not just that, they go ahead and define it even further. They say Abhavas Chaturvida. Praga bhava, pradvamsa bhava, atyanta bhava, anyonya bhava. Praga bhava, it was never there before. It is there now, but it was never there before. Pradvamsa bhava, it is there now, it is not there tomorrow. It no longer exists. Atyanta bhava, it is never going to exist. Anyonya bhava, this cannot be that. A cloth cannot be a mat. A cloth cannot be a pot. So I think the whole concept of abhava and the treating it as something that is there, like how Pranav ji had spoke about elucidating how it is there and it is not there, and that realm of existence and non-existence. And I think in a very quantum physical world and in a very subatomic level, you can theorize it. But I think in those days, and 5,000 years ago, when it was only senses and your ekagra chinta and your dhyana that could go into things, this is how they defined. I mean, I see there's a lot of parallel in what I heard in the class today, and
Yes.
maybe what I've read. I could be wrong, but I think there is some relation.
You're right. This is from Vaisheshika. They have very clearly talked about
Yes.
it. Yes, very good. Let's go.
The one thing which I want to tell you here, it is not a postulation. It is not a it is not a what I'm saying. It's a hypothesis. So all these Shak Darshanas in Sanatana Dharma, they're called Darshana. So Darshana means
Yes.
it is not a hypothesis. They have experienced it at that level. So it's their experience they're sharing. Like scientists give the results of experiments. Darshana means to see is to be. That means it's an inner experience that they're explaining in that language. It's not a hypothesis they are trying to give.
Yes.
So we can see a lot of parallel between what they are saying and what modern scientists say. And for all you know, they might have borrowed from these concepts. I don't know. So
Yeah. Good. So I think if there's any more questions, we'll take one or two more because it's already beyond 8. So if there are any questions, please, or even a statement or an opinion which rhymes with what we are talking about. Anyone has anything to say, please go ahead.
Namaskaram, Prabhuji. Bhavana here.
Namaskar, Bhavana.
I wanted to know about the concept of mukti. Is it anyway related to this vacuum state, what was being referred to?
Yeah, mukti is what we call as freedom. Okay, freedom from what we call as or liberation is from what we call as observed reality. Observed reality is appearance. So that appearance is real. So that freedom from that, then what remains is my essential nature, which is pure awareness or consciousness. We call it shunya or mukti, or in both Buddhist terms called nirvana. So various names are there. So it's our essential nature is called essential nature. To be real, living in the essential nature is called mukti. But now we are not, right now we are not. We identify the body, mind, and intellect. As for the physics and as for the Vedanta, body, mind, intellect, and the world is just appearance. It's not real in that sense. But we start thinking it's real and solid and go through suffering. So now become freedom from this illusion is called mukti.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Any more question?
All that I can say is the physics will take us to mukti. Next few chapter in few years, physics will have one section called mukti chapter. Liberation. Or they will have magic section, how to create anything out of anything, nothing.
Very good.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you, Pranav.
So
Yeah,
thanks,
sure.
Pranav. Yes. Yeah. Thanks, everyone, and thanks, Prabhuji, for all the comments.
Thank you,
So
Pranav.
thanks, everyone. Hari Om. We'll
Hari Om.
meet with on the
What's your
next topic.
Next topic, Pranav?
Sorry?
What is next topic? It's very interesting, making things very interesting. So what is next topic which is going to be there? Is Boltzmann brain a good topic?
Yeah, we can speak on that as well.
Or vacuum energy?
What I spoke about was vacuum today.
Okay.
Wants to come to something solid. Okay. It's now
Yeah,
we
we can
focus
speak.
on something.
We can talk on Boltzmann brains. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Somebody wants to ask a question.
Yeah, somebody is asking. I can ask a question. Can I? Yes, Parvati, please go ahead. Ask a question.
ಪಾರ್ವತಿಜಿ
ಗುರುಜಿ ಅದೇ ನನಗೆ 2 ವರ್ಡ್ಗಳ ಮೀನಿಂಗ್ ಬೇಕಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಅದು ಒಂದ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಈ ಮಾಯಿಗೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೇ ಇದೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಕೇಳ್ಬೋದಾ?
ಕೇಳಿ.
ಅನುಭಾವ ಮತ್ತೆ ಅನುಭವ ಇವೆರಡರದ್ದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಡಿಫರೆನ್ಸ್ ಬೇಕಾಗಿತ್ತು ಗುರುಜಿ.
ಅನುಭಾವ ಮತ್ತು
ಅನುಭವ
ನಿಮ್ಮ ಅರ್ಥದಲ್ಲಿ ಅನುಭವ ಅಂದ್ರೇನು, ಅನುಭವ ಅಂದ್ರೇನು?
ಈಗ ಇಂದ್ರಿಯಗಳ ಸಂಪರ್ಕ ಹೊಂದಿ ಒಂದು ಬದುಕೋ ರೀತಿ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ ಸಮಾಜದ ಜೊತೆ,
ಹೌದು.
ಆ ಸಂಬಂಧದ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಪಡೆಯೋ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಸಂಗತಿಗಳು ಅನುಭವ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಓದಿದ್ದೀನಿ.
ಎಲ್ಲವೂ ಅನುಭವ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಇಂದ್ರಿಯಗಳ ಅನುಭವ. ಅನುಭವ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಇರುವಿಕೆ, ಭಾವ.
ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಭವ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ ಹುಟ್ಟು ಸಾವುಗಳ ಚಕ್ರ ಅಲ್ವಾ ಗುರುಜಿ?
ಅಲ್ಲ ನೋಡಿ, ನನ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಡೆಫಿನೇಷನ್ ನೋಡೋಣ. ಅದು ಎಲ್ಲಿ ವೇದಾಂತಿ ಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅನುಭವ ಒಂದು ಸಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ವಸ್ತುಗಳ ಸಂಪರ್ಕ ಬಂದಾಗ ಅನುಭವ. ಅನುಭಾವ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನನ್ನ ಇರುವಿಕೆ, ಭಾವ, ನನ್ನ ಇರುವಿಕೆ.
ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತು.
ಅದು ವಸ್ತು ಸಂಪರ್ಕದ ಬರಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಇರುವಿಕೆಯಿಂದ ಬರ್ತದೆ.
ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಆ ಭಾವ ಇರ್ಬೇಕು ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ.
ಹೌದು. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಇವರು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ವ್ಯಾಕ್ಯೂಮ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಇವರು ಪ್ರಭುದೇವ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಅಲ್ಲಮ ಪ್ರಭು ಅವ್ರು ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಬಯಲು 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 ಬಟ್ಟಂ ಬಯಲು, ಆ ಬಯಲು ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ.
ಹೌದು,
ರೈಟ್.
ಅದೇ ಅವಕಾಶ ಅಲ್ವಾ ಗುರುಜಿ? ಬಯಲು ಅಂದ್ರೆ
ಬಯಲು ಬಯಲು ಆ ಅವಕಾಶ ಸ್ಪೇಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಆತ್ಮ ಬ್ರಹ್ಮನ್.
ಅದೇ ಆತ್ಮನ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ನಾವು ಆತ್ಮವಾಗಿರೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಬಯಲು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಕ.
ಆತ್ಮವೇ ಇರ್ಬೇಕಲ್ಲ, ನಾವು ಮತ್ತೆ ಆತ್ಮ ಎರಡಿಲ್ಲ.
ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಆತ್ಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದಾಗೋದು.
ಒಂದಾಗೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಎರಡು ಇಲ್ವೇ ಇಲ್ಲ.
ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಗುರುಜಿ, ಶಬ್ದದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಕ್ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಇವರು ಅಕ್ಕಮಹಾದೇವರು ಒಂದ್ ಕಡೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಧ್ಯಾನಾವಸ್ಥೆ ಸ್ಥಿತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಎಚ್ಚರದಿಂದ ನಿದ್ರೆಗೆ ಹೋಗೋದು, ನಿದ್ರೆಯಿಂದ ಸ್ವಪ್ನಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗೋದು, ಸ್ವಪ್ನದಿಂದ ಸುಷುಪ್ತಿಗೆ ಹೋಗೋದು, ಈ ಒಂದು ವಿಸ್ತರಿಸುವ ಬೆಳವಣಿಗೆಗೆ ಇದು ಮಾಯೆ ಅಂತ ಅಂತರಂಗದ ಮಾಯೆ ಅನುಭವ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಗುರುಜಿ. ಅದು
ಹೌದು, ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್.
ಅದು ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ನನಗೆ ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತೀರಾ? ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನನಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ, ನಾನು
ಸಪರೇಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡೋಣ.
ಓಕೆ ಗುರುಜಿ, ಓಕೆ, ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.
ಹರಿ ಓಂ.
ಹರಿ ಓಂ.
Hari Om, everyone.
Light of the Self Foundation, Atmajyoti Vishwa Gurukulam, is recognized by Karnataka Sanskrit University. We are a 25-year-old organization dedicated to self-realization and selfless service. Many volunteers are working selflessly for spreading light of love, light of wisdom, light of peace. Atmano Mokshartham Jagat Hitaya Cha. You are welcome to visit our website, subscribe to our YouTube channels, share the videos with your friends and like our videos. Namaste.